The project has already been inaugurated. The cables are already supporting the weight of the concrete. The structure is standing, but the journey is not yet complete. The Brazil-Paraguay Integration Bridge has been completed and is one of the most strategic infrastructure projects in recent South American history. Designed to relieve historical bottlenecks and expand logistical connections, it could become a new route for traffic heading into continental transport corridors. But there's one detail that changes everything. Even though it's ready, the connection still doesn't operate at full capacity. Traffic remains limited. The access points are still under construction, and the system that should make the project make sense is not yet complete. What we have is much more than just a new connection. A completed project waiting for everything else to work. Stay with us for the next few minutes and understand how a finished bridge can reveal a much bigger problem. More than just infrastructure, it needs to be made to work. The Brazil-Paraguay Integration Bridge is located in the tri-border region formed by the two countries and Argentina. More precisely, it connects Foz do Iguaçu and the city of Presidente Franco over the Paraná River. More than just a crossing, it represents the second road connection between Brazil and Paraguay, created decades after the already saturated Friendship Bridge. With 760 meters and a span of 470 meters, one of the largest in Latin America, the construction stands out not only for its size, but also for the role it intends to play. It wasn't designed just to cross a river. It was conceived as part of a larger network, a logistics corridor capable of redistributing flows and reducing pressure on one of the busiest regions in South America. But all these numbers in this proposal raise an essential question. If there was already a connection between the two countries, why build another one? For decades, the Friendship Bridge concentrated practically all the flow between Brazil and Paraguay in the tri-border region. Over time, what was once a connection turned into a bottleneck. Today, about 100,000 people and 45,000 vehicles cross the structure every day, putting pressure not only on the connection, but on the entire surrounding urban system. The challenge was never just crossing the Paraná River, it was the uncontrolled growth of the cities and the concentration of traffic at a single point. As trade increased, driven by regional supply chains, the operation on the bridge came close to its limit, with constant lines, delays, loss of efficiency, and increased logistics costs. This impact was no longer just urban, it directly affected the economic competitiveness of the region. Products took longer to circulate, cargo was held up, and the operational structure began to lose efficiency on a continental scale. Given this scenario, the solution couldn't simply be to expand the existing structure. It was necessary to create a corridor, an alternative route, capable of distributing the flow before it reached the critical points. It is in this context that the integration bridge emerges, not as a replacement, but as a strategic complement, an attempt to reorganize a system that had already been operating at its limit for decades. Because in the end, the limitation was never the structure itself, but everything that came to depend exclusively on it. This brings us to an inevitable question. How can we turn this solution into something that really works in practice? The integration bridge was officially inaugurated in December 2025, marking the completion of the second road connection between Brazil and Paraguay in the tri-border region. However, despite the structural completion, operations are still being rolled out gradually and on a limited basis. At this initial stage, traffic was only allowed for unloaded trucks and at specific times, allowing inspection, control, customs, and security systems to be gradually adjusted. Today, the main bottleneck is starting to shift from the crossing of the Paraná River to the infrastructure that connects this project to the rest of the territory. On the Brazilian side, this challenge was practically solved with the Perimetral Leste, a 14.7-kilometer highway that connects the bridge directly to the BR-277 and diverts heavy traffic from the urban center of Foz do Iguaçu. In Paraguay, however, the situation is still evolving. The full use of the connection depends on two factors. The first is the completion of the Corredor Metropolitano del Oeste, a ring road with more than 30 kilometers in length. The second refers to the complementary works, such as the new bridge over the Monde River, scheduled for 2027. This dependency highlights a central point. Modern infrastructure does not work in isolation. The bridge does not solve the problem by itself. It needs to be part of a continuous system. The next steps are just as decisive as the construction itself. Completing the Paraguayan access roads, consolidating the immigration checkpoints, and expanding authorization for freight transport are fundamental steps for the project to fulfill its role. From a structural point of view, the bridge follows the cable-stayed model, a solution that allows for spanning large distances efficiently and without the need for intermediate supports. The 470-meter clear span eliminates interference in the river and ensures the continuity of navigation. This type of construction requires a balance between rigidity and flexibility. It needs to withstand heavy loads and at the same time respond to forces such as wind and temperature variations. The main towers, about 190 meters tall, serve as the structural core of the system. From them, the stay cables transfer the loads from the deck directly, distributing the forces.
Ao longo da estrutura.
This height is not just a visual element, it ensures the proper angle of the cables and efficiency in load transfer. By the way, it's worth highlighting that carrying out the construction over the Paraná River required complex logistical solutions. The assembly was done in segments using floating equipment and high-precision lifting systems. Each section of the deck had to be positioned with minimal tolerances, since small deviations could complicate
O alinhamento global da obra.
the bridge's geometric precision, which was essential to its final performance. Another key point is in the foundations. The deep piles were designed to transfer high loads to more resistant layers of the subsoil, taking into account the geotechnical conditions of the riverbed. In structures of this size, any failure in this system can compromise the entire stability over time. What defines this project goes far beyond its size or complexity. It's the fact that it's already finished, but it depends on an entire system to function fully. Engineering has solved the crossing. Now the challenge is to make everything around it keep up with the same scale. To understand the scale of the bridge and the integration, you need to turn numbers into real references. With 760 meters in length, the structure is equivalent to about 7 to 8 soccer fields lined up, or approximately 8 city blocks the standard in a city like São Paulo. In terms of connection, it's like traveling more than 700 meters suspended over the river, supported by cables and towers, without any intermediate support in the main section. The 470-meter clear span further increases this sense of grandeur. It's practically half a kilometer continuously in the air, which places the project at a relatively high technical level among the cable-stayed bridges in Latin America. For comparison, this space would be enough to line up side by side about 7 ships the size of the Everest, one of the largest vessels in the world, with a width of 61.5 meters. A reference that helps to visualize the horizontal scale of this span. Now, when we look at the investment estimated at around 1.9 billion reais, the scale translates into more tangible numbers. This amount would be enough to buy approximately 25,000 brand new economy cars, considering an average price of 75,000 reais. In another comparison, this amount could build almost 2 kilometers of subway on Line 4 in São Paulo. However, the most relevant comparison is in the flow, and that's exactly where the scale stops being just physical and becomes functional. If fully integrated into the system, the integration bridge has the potential to transform the logistics dynamics of the region. By distributing traffic and reducing historical bottlenecks, it improves visibility, shortens waiting times, and increases transportation efficiency, impacting operational costs, competitiveness, and economic integration between Brazil and Paraguay. In addition, the structure is part of a broader context, connected to logistics corridors that aim to expand South America's connectivity.
Com mercados internacionais.
In this scenario, it can operate as a new gateway for routes that go through Paraguay toward the Bioceanic Corridor, not as a direct connection to the Pacific, but as part of an evolving system. Although there is still no official estimate of the annual economic gain, the logic is clear. Today, the Friendship Bridge handles about 100,000 people and 45,000 vehicles per day, a volume that puts pressure on the infrastructure and reduces logistical efficiency. The new connection is being created to redistribute part of this flow. In addition to the direct effects, there are significant indirect impacts, such as reduced fuel consumption and fleet operating time, as well as encouraging investment and cross-border trade. But it's essential to remain realistic. In fact, the project doesn't solve the problem. The impact depends on the completion of the access routes and the full operation of the surrounding system. It remains a partial solution. In fact, the integration bridge is ready, but the route is not yet. It represents an important step forward, but it also reveals a bigger challenge. Infrastructure does not work in isolation. Major projects only fulfill their role when they are part of complete, integrated, and operational systems. In the end, this is not just the story of a bridge, it's the story of building only the first step and make it work. It's a real challenge. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. Given that the bridge structure is ready but its access routes are still limited, what is your view on this? Will we have broader, more organized, and much smoother access later this year, in 2026? Either way, leave your opinion here in the comments. I'll make sure to read all of them. That's all for now. Take care and see you in the next video.